Hello and welcome to this second video of presentation of the second topic, languages. As I told you in the previous video, this one is entitled The Curse of Babel. First of all, we have to explain this expression. You might know the story of Babel, the biblical myth. It's a story that says that in the old days, a long time ago, the people of the earth only spoke one language. That means that they could understand each other very easily. There was no problem of language barrier, etc., etc. And one day those people decided to be as high, as powerful as God. And they decided to build a tower, the Tower of Babel, okay? And because they spoke the same language, it was very easy for them to build this tower because they could communicate very easily. God was not happy about that. He thought that how can a human be higher than me or as high as me? How dare they do that? So he destroyed the tower and he put a curse on humanity. This curse was now each region, each area in the world will speak a different language. Therefore, communication will be more difficult between the people of the world. So the diversity of languages prevents communication, makes it even more difficult, even today. Okay, so this is what I meant by the curse of Babel. There has been throughout human history a kind of dream to go back to this mythological era when people spoke the same language. Historically, around the world, there have been common languages. These common languages are used, or were used, and are still used to make exchanges of people, of goods, information, art, etc., easier around the world. In the past, for example, Latin had such a status. These languages that are used around the world to communicate easily are called lingua francas. This is an Italian expression, okay? And these lingua francas have changed throughout history. For example, Latin was one at one point, then French took over around the 17th, 18th century, and today, of course, as you know, English is the lingua franca. The problem with these lingua francas is that they denote a cultural or an economic superiority, hegemony. Okay, for example, English has been the lingua franca ever since the US has become a major political, economic power in the world, basically at the end of World War I. So this denotes a certain hegemony which some people criticize. So there have been people throughout history who dreamt about having a more neutral language that would not be linked to one culture, but that would be common to people around the world to make communication easier. One of those languages, as you may know, is called Esperanto. It was created in the 19th century, in 1887. Other languages have been created since then. For example, in the 1920s, a language called interlingua was imagined. Those are constructed languages, made up languages, invented languages to separate language and culture and political and economic power, etc., etc. So you see, people have dreamt to go back to before the curse of Babel. But the reality is, these languages, these neutral languages, have never been really used. And today, in the globalized world, the lingua franca is basically English. It's the language of business, it's the language of the internet, it's the language of movies and series that you see on television, it's the language of songs, etc., etc. So there's this kind of cultural power also that brings English around the world and makes people speak more and more English. However, English is not the same everywhere, and it has been adopted in different ways around the world. again, here there is a mix between different languages. There is a kind of glocalization. A glocalization means that when something or a phenomenon is global, but with local specificities. Okay, so for example, there have been mixes of languages in India, for example, between Hindu and English. This language is called Hinglish. Okay, so it mixes bits of Hindu and bits of English together. In Singapore, for example, there is another mixed language which is called Singlish, and it's an actual language spoken by people. So there's a mixed language. Languages evolve, languages move. They are not fixed. Of course, we talked about Spanglish in the previous video in the US. So you see that this is even happening in English-speaking countries. Also, because English is such a globalized language and such a global means of communication, some people have thought that, well, English was too difficult and it should be made easier to learn by everyone, anyone in the world. So somebody in the 1930s created what he called basic English, which is, as the name suggests, a very simplified English. Today, and we'll talk about it in class, a French man also invented what he calls globish, which is the globalized English, the kind of airport English that everybody speaks in business, for example, nowadays. So these have been created to facilitate international communication, business communication for business deals, etc. There is a controversy here again to know whether or not the person who invented globish really invented it, or is it just the way people speak English around the world today? That is to say, it could be considered as a broken English, an imperfect English. So some people say, yes, nowadays English is everywhere, everyone speaks English, but the problem is no one speaks it very well. And one issue is the development of university courses, all given in English, for example, in non-English speaking countries. For example, in the Netherlands or in France, the last few years have seen the emergence of many courses, university courses, master's degrees, etc., given only in English. And you will see on the website I've put one article dealing with this. I think it would be of particular interest to see the pros and cons of these new courses taught 100% in English. For example, in France, in the school Les Arts et Métiers, there is a master in material and engineering sciences, taught only in English. At the University of Aix-Marseille, there is a master's in photonics engineering, nanophotonics and biophotonics, taught only in English. And the list is very long all around France. So you see, there's a debate here around, okay, everybody speaks English, but how good is their English? And is it sufficient just to see university courses taught in English? How well does the teacher speak English? How well do the students understand this English? These are controversial issues. Another issue around the status of English in the world is the fact that many English speakers think, well, why should I learn a foreign language? Because I speak English. And English is the lingua franca today, so why should I bother learning another language? And this has had very large consequences in English-speaking countries, in schools in English-speaking countries. For example, at high school level, second languages, foreign languages, have become less and less compulsory. That means that less and less students are learning a second language. In the US, it's a little bit less true because many students still learn, for example, Spanish at school because there's so many Spanish speakers around. But, for example, in the UK, since 2004, there are less than 10% students who continue learning a foreign language after their GCSE. The GCSE is the equivalent of the Brevet des Collèges. So when they reach senior high school, the last part of the secondary education, not many of them, only 10% of them learn a foreign language. This has consequences not only in the variety of languages spoken around the world, but also in the cultural aspect. You might think that people are less open-minded if they haven't studied a foreign language, because by studying a foreign language you also study a foreign culture, habits, arts, literature, cinema, etc. So you're more interested in knowing the country and the culture of which you're learning the language. So these have cultural implications as well. Last but not least, there are advantages of being bilingual. Scientists have studied and proved that being bilingual, don't get me wrong, means being brought up, being educated at home in a two-language environment. For example, the mom speaks English, the dad speaks French, or two other languages. Okay, so being bilingual is really having two native languages. Scientists have proven that the advantages were not only linguistic and cultural. Building all those parameters in your mind, shifting from one language to the other, actually help children being more efficient and more performant at school in all kinds of tasks. And so some people say that being bilingual makes you smarter, as we'll see in a video in class. So I hope you have taken notes and that you are starting to think about this issue of languages, starting to make your own ideas on the debates at stake here. And I'll see you in class to put all this into practice. Bye.